Yeah.
And you really have to be very aware of different cultures, might be an individual or a team. This is a superpower that like really needs a lot of practice, empathizing with the other person or the other team, with the other culture in general, right? And really trying to be open, like open as in things don't happen by the rules that you know. They like now it's a new playing ground, right? So now you have to find out the rules again. And these new rules are typically a mix of different old new rules, right? But this is a new reality that everybody has to work on because the world is becoming smaller.
Welcome to the Product Quest podcast. Thanks for joining us on our journey to better understand innovation and product strategy. My name is Scott Burleson, and join me as always, my co-hosts Jan Vermouth and Jonathan Edwards. Today we welcome our very special guest, Busra Coskuner. Busra is an experienced product manager who is now founder of Producteer. She coaches, mentors other product managers, and helps companies to develop their product management function. In reading Busra's bios, I'm immediately attracted to that she is a practitioner first and coach mentor second. The product manager position is much better understood than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. And I personally appreciate the revolution that practitioner leaders, such as Busra, are leading the charge. And I have a lot of questions. Busra Coskuner, welcome to the Product Quest podcast.
Thank you, Scott. That was an amazing introduction. I'm like, oh, I'm humbled, blushing.
Well, we're excited.
On top of the blush that I have on my cheeks, makeup.
Now, first question. On Twitter, you describe yourself as the bad girl of product management. So I want to ask about that. Tell us a little more about that. What's the bad girl of product management?
Oh, that's a good catch because I'm not using Twitter for like, I don't know. I think since Elon Musk happened, I've not been using it anymore. But yeah, that was the latest update that I did before I stopped using it. It was out of frustration because why did I write it? Let me think. It had a reason. Yeah, it was out of frustration because I used to. So we just shortly talked about, right? I'm from Berlin originally. So I live in Switzerland, but I'm originally from Berlin. I am a person who calls things out. If it's bullshit, I call it out. If it's inappropriate, I call it out. If it's not realistic, I call it out. I just call it out. I might have, so now that I've been living in Switzerland for 7 years, I might have developed a slightly polite way of calling things out.
The Swiss grinded you off a bit. Like
yes, it definitely did a bit. But I still call things out. And when I argue, also on the internet, I'm very active on LinkedIn, especially. And when I have discussions, then I still say like, what? No, this is bullshit. Like what you say doesn't make sense, right? And still, while I'm doing that, the only generalization I ever make is that generalizations are not realistic, right? So no extremes are reflecting reality, and this is really only a generalization that I make. And when somebody tries to argue with me on any kind of generalization or any kind of extreme, I call it out and I say like, look, generally speaking, maybe, but practically speaking, wrong because, right? And I happen to get into very hard and harsh discussions from time to time. But I continue on that and I insist in saying this is bullshit. And that's why I call myself the bad girl of product management, because I call it out and I will call it out. Right.
I love that.
But that's really literally the only platform where I wrote this ever, right? So I'm the bad girl of product management manager. So maybe I should use this more often.
Well, we do our research here, as you can see.
Yeah, I do.
But I really found that interesting, and also, but that was my next question about your no BS or no bullshit product management. You've also got that throughout your stuff, and
Yeah.
we had a little talk prior to turning on the recording about your background in Berlin and how you live in Switzerland now, and that really does feel like those experiences could have some real practical benefits to you. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about how that directness and maybe sort of how your Swiss experiences as well have sort of contributed to your coaching style.
Yeah, sure. We just had, let's actually repeat the example that we had. So Jan, when you're in Switzerland and you ask for salt, how would you do that?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to translate, but it would be something like, would you mind, would you mind thinking about passing me the salt? Something like that. So there's a very
please again.
Please, I forgot to please again. I think I need to, but it's a very, you have to kind of do it in a way. You cannot ask it directly. You have to kind of, would you mind passing me the salt, please? Or would you mind considering passing me the salt? Something like that. At the very least, you cannot be too. That would be considered impolite if you would do it too kind of directly. So.
And in Berlin, like Berlin is known for being extremely direct, extremely open, extremely like really hardcore no bullshit style. And in Berlin, you would just finger point to the salt and would say like salt. Yeah. That's it. Salt.
That would be like super rude in Switzerland.
Yeah, extremely rude, right? In Berlin, this is just time efficient.
Yeah.
You don't spend too many words on something that people can understand, right? So you would just say like salt. If you're polite, you would say salt, please.
Yeah.
And but like this was an exaggeration because there are less and less real Berliners in Berlin, so they're moving out and there are more and more other cultures and coming into Berlin, which is really nice, right? But that's a completely different topic. Oh, maybe not, right? Because it's also, anyways, it was just touching the product culture topic that we were also speaking about shortly. So in Berlin, when you ask for salt, you would still like ask something like, you would say something like, can you pass the salt, please? Okay. And then even this can is considered as impolite in Switzerland, right? So it's very hard. It's really direct, right? Like, can you pass the salt? And please, if you're polite, right? And so there's this part of me who's really direct and open and really speaks out what it is without any fluff and without any bullshit. And in Berlin, when I was working, the working culture or the communication culture, when like at work, is pretty similar, or was. I've been living here for 7 years, so maybe things have changed in the meantime. But back then, before I moved here, it was like pretty direct, right? Like at work, we would really not want to lose time, and I really mean it, right? It would be considered as losing time when you use lots of unnecessary sentences. If you could just come to the point, right? And they would really say like, come to the point. And they would literally call you out on coming to the point. And then coming here, it was the exact opposite. So the first year I tried to work in Switzerland with my Berliner attitude and Berliner communication style of time efficiency, and it would not work. Right? So people would consider you as rude, as impolite, and they would not want to work with you. And now you have to figure it out, right? So you come into a new culture and you have to figure out what's the best way of communication, what's the best way of actually building relationships and building trust, right? Trust is all about relationships, about transparency, about sharing knowledge, exchanging, and so on and so forth. And you have to figure it out how to build this trust based on the new culture that you meet.
Yeah. And
this mix of actually pointing things out. So this was the thing that I was missing, right? So after a year, I'll be very honest, I was in a depression because I felt like, damn, I cannot work here because I cannot communicate because I'm the Berliner, right? So this is how I work. This is how I communicate. Until then, I found an international environment where it was more like a mix, and it was okay. So that's a different topic. But in a Swiss company, this doesn't work. And but then I kind of understood, okay, yes, you can still point things out, but you don't have to be super direct in your face, right? And this is also the way how I write on my blog or on LinkedIn, right? So I call these things out, and I continue doing that, especially when things are harmful. So when they are not harmful, but just it depends, and I just add my perspective to it. But when they are harmful, then I call them out. When I think like this is going to be really bad for any PM's career, because this is simply wrong and harmful, then I call it out. But I do it in a not so impolite way, not so offensive way, right? So that there's the other notion of people on LinkedIn who tend to be very offensive and be like, I don't know, all agile teams suck. Like, don't say that to any agile team. Like, who are you to claim that agile teams suck? This is very personal, right? You're offending a group of people here. Like, how can you do that? Or agile is that. Well, okay, agile is that. Let's leave it there. Agile is not that, but the way how like agile is the foundation of everything, but the way how agile has been transformed into a business and sold to companies and implemented is wrong. And that way of doing agile is that. Okay, fine. But here you see how I'm breaking up the generalization, and I'm like, look, guys, this is bullshit to say agile is that, because agile is not that at all, right? But there is a nuance that we have to talk about, which is what agile became, right? And this is what I mean. Like, I'm calling things out, but we don't have to do it in an offensive way. We have to do it in a constructive way so that change can happen. Change does not happen by being rude. Change happens
I
by
really like this.
inspiring people.
This is so important to kind of, how can we find ways of bringing more nuance to the discussion, right? Kind of these two things, bringing more nuance to the discussion and not letting things just slide. So I sometimes I think I do this and then I regret it afterwards. I let things slide out of politeness, consideration, wrong ideas about whatever. But you shouldn't let things slide which are not helpful or even harmful. And then it's hard to find a way of kind of, or I struggle with that, kind of keeping myself to my own ideals and saying, no, if something is wrong, you should call this out. And I struggle with that sometimes. But I really love this time, just trying to bring more nuance to the discussion.
The benefits of this way of thinking for a product manager and also for a coach of product managers, as you are, I'm going to circle back around to that. They're sort of obvious to me initially, but I want us to explicitly talk about the sort of things I'm thinking. But before we get too far down that road, just what would be your definition of product management? Or what does a product manager do for folks that might not be as familiar?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will tell you in a nuanced answer that it depends.
Of course.
I know there's a hard line and hard image of what product management should be. And I kind of agree with that image as in what it should be, but what it is at the moment is a different topic, right? What it should be is, it should be the middle point of the interests of a company in what to do with a product. What I mean with that is there's this Venn diagram, right? That Martin Erickson has actually shared a couple of years ago. It shows the intersection of business, UX, and tech, right? So, and based on that, the product manager is in the middle and makes sure to check desirability, usability, and feasibility. Viability, usability, and feasibility. And now, from my point of view, the fourth one is missing, which is desirability. So from my point of view, the product manager needs to check all those 4 risks in order to do one thing. And that's what I promote. Like the product manager's job is just really one thing, which is making sure that the right thing is built.
Okay.
So the product management function is a function. If we let's call it, or let's talk about functions first before we go into cross functionality, right? So as a function, product management needs to make sure that the company builds the right thing. And when you ask me what the right thing is, then the right thing is something that we can make business with, like a product that we can make business with that customers love, right? So in the product management scene, there's this notion of build products that customers love. This is what product manager should focus on. And I say, no, the product manager should focus on making business with products that customers love. And if we consider this sentence, make business with products that customers love, then we already automatically address all those 4 areas or 4 risks of viability, desirability, usability, and feasibility, right? And this is what a product manager should do, a product management function should do, and the product leader needs to set the way, or right, the way, the empowerment, and so on, so that the product team can figure it out what it is to build, so that the company makes business with products that customers love. This is my definition of what it should be. Now, what it is a bit different, and now it comes to, it depends, right? And I will not say this is bad. I will say this is the reality that we live in, and we need to change it step by step. Or if we don't change it because we can't, the reality is we can't always change it, right? Then we have to make sure that product managers in their space, in their micro and their own macro environment, can deliver to the goal to build the right thing the way they can in their environment, right? And this can mean what? As an example, so we go back to the agile teams, right? Now we go to the cross-functional teams. When the agile movement started, then we created cross-functional teams, right? And this is the right way to do. And in this cross-functional team, if it's embedded into a big complex corporate machinery that actually is seeing agility only on the delivery space and is like, shit in, shit out, just faster on the market.
But a lot of it.
And a lot of it. That is a reality that is happening, right? And in this constellation, product management often is split into product management, product ownership, where the product manager tries to reflect a business function, or not reflect, represents business function, and the product owner is kind of like the person who takes over requests, requirements, and so on and so forth. And in their environment, handling or managing the product backlog together with the product manager, that's the space where they need to find a way to make sure the right thing is being built. So it's not that they don't have any power. It's just their power is limited. And in their limited way, they can use their power to make sure only things are built that are really necessary and needed. But it's very difficult, of course. But there is some space. In other functions or in other companies, product management is still part of marketing, for it. And why I'm saying still is actually looking at the history, there are 2 paths where product management comes from, right? So one path is the technical path where product ownership arose and so on, right? Like with extreme programming, there was this role of the customer or the client, I think, not 100% sure what's the name. And then with Scrum, it turned into product owner, and so on and so forth. And then there's the other path of a marketing function that comes from brand management, that from I think Procter and Gamble, and where the brand manager was actually responsible for the 4Ps mix, right? So the product, placement, promotion, and price. And from there, in tech companies, the new role of the tech product manager actually kind of split up and started to take care of the product as one of the 4Ps. And then by time also about price, right? It depends. Some big corporations, there's a whole department who takes care of pricing, right? But like in others, it's product manager who takes care of product and price. And so to conclude everything to a point, yes, what it should be is we need to make sure product manager make sure we make business with products that customers love. On the other hand, it's not always possible at the moment because reality is different, right? Or not in that extent, or in this way of having autonomy and empowerment. So,
can I jump in here? Maybe so. Is there kind of, do you purposefully say make business with something that customers love, or so? What's the relationship kind of between those two things? Should they be balanced? Is the business coming first, or how?
It depends.
Okay.
Boom. It depends. So yes, the product team. Okay, then one step back. So typically coming from this history, we either tend to over-focus on the technical feasibility or over-focus on the viability, like on the business goals, right? Yeah. So the product function is there to make sure we also focus on users, right? So this is where it came from. So we need to make sure that our customers are happy, that our users are happy, that they're satisfied, and we built something that addresses their needs. So this is where it comes from as well, right? Or why it's so important to have the product function. But now, and this is something that we have to keep in mind, that time changes, and with time, history changes, and with history, focus changes.
Yeah.
Right now, we either focus on tech or on business, but now is the time to bring it together through product, through users, and have everything in balance. That means, yes, we need to focus on business because we're not building products for a hobby, right? So this is a business. We make money with it. No money, no business. No business, no employment. No employment, no money for the employees, right? So it's all connected. It's a system. And if we do not consider the business part and we only build in order to make customers happy, then we get into the trap that we were in like 15 years ago or 10 years ago, where it was all about hypergrowth. And people would say like, oh, we figure out the business model later, right? So 15 years, kind of, right? And then it turned into like, okay, we need to start with business model to understand how we can make money, because like the times where internet was new. Okay, I'm a German. I can say that in Germany it's still new. Kind of, right? So basically back then when internet was kind of new, we were able to allow these kind of thoughts, right? So we were still able to make money with advertising and so on and so forth. But now ads are not a sustainable business anymore. So now we need to have a good business model, right? And this mindset shift happened like 10, 15 years ago, that we really need business models. But still, everything was totally focused on hypergrowth, right? Take VC money, put it into hypergrowth, and then even if we make money, we don't have to be profitable from day one, which is also a way to go, right? It's not bad. It's one reality. The other reality is we also have a lot of bootstrap companies. Yeah. They are profitable from day one because otherwise they could not bootstrap it, right? They had to be profitable from day one. And there's a different way to go. And they think definitely business through product. And that's the magic, right? Business through product. How can you create a product that is so good, not only in the user experience, but really solving a real problem, a real pain, right? Or serving a real desire, a real need that people want to pay, even only for the value prop, even if the product itself doesn't even exist yet, right? Yeah. Just paying for the value prop because they are thinking of solving a specific problem that is so painful that people are looking for a solution. And if you take this mindset, and as you can hear, I'm totally a bootstrapper, although I work the majority of my life for investor-driven companies or VC-backed companies, right? But I love this thought of build something that is serving such a big need that people want to pay for it. It's an automatic validation that you're onto something, right?
Yeah.
And you can make business with it. Boom, and there we go. And we automatically have the balance. Yeah. Sounds easier than it is. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. But this is the way that we need to go, especially now, right? With all the frozen money on the market, we really need to find the ways how we can make money with the product without scamming the users or customers, but actually with serving them.
So basically go back to how business was done in the past. I mean, people were doing, I mean, the basic idea that, you know, you need to sell something and make money, I think, you know, has been a reality since forever. Yes. And as you mentioned, it's only recently that this idea of, okay, we just need to gain traction, put a lot of money in gaining users, and then we'll figure out a way to monetize. I think this is quite a new phenomenon, or at least like in the past 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah. Very classic physical product selling, right? So if I want to sell a shampoo, then I need to make sure that it's covering costs, and it's also adding on top of it so that we have a big margin so that we can actually continue running the business and actually paying salaries, right? So totally. Yeah.
One of the themes that I hear, and then I'm gonna get around to why I really feel like I appreciate this sort of cultural, your different backgrounds there, and how that it's obvious, or it's clear to me how that's very useful. But the theme that I heard as I was just sort of taking some notes is balance. You have the balance, because within a company, you get folks in silos. So folks in engineering, they're not typically thinking so much about how big is the market. They're just solving this. They're just executing. They're just building something. And on the other side, on the marketing, you know, they're thinking about, well, how do we get more money? They're not thinking so much. They're just literally in their own world. And maybe that's why this Venn diagram persists so much. I love sort of how you elaborate on it. But anyway, at least as a framework, because there's the poor product manager in the middle trying to make sure all these different functions that are in silos are working together. To your point, you know, building products people like, that enjoy, that support the business, and that address a need so big that the pricing sort of takes care of itself. It's sort of funny when you have pricing departments and you're like, hey, you know, go get more price for this. Well, I mean, if it was that simple, well, okay, go increase the price. I mean, it's more complicated than that.
I will disappoint you. Most of the time, it is easy to increase the price.
Oh well, hey, but that's even that's interesting, because that's probably built on a presumption that when we don't really know we don't understand how big the problem is, the customer problem is.
Exactly.
So we might be undershooting it. Yeah.
Exactly. And pricing is one part of the business model, right? So it's about taking care of the whole business model as a product manager. So you have to think about ways, or let's put it this way, what's part of the business model? There are multiple things, but among others, there's also the notion of revenue streams, right? So pricing is one thing, but then you have to think about pricing for what? Right?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a one-off sale? Is it going to be a subscription? Is there a combination of that? Is it going to have a trial? Is it going to be a freemium model? Right? So, I don't know, is it coupled with offline experience? I buy something offline and I have a QR code so that I can have an additional subscription on that, right? So for example, diapers, right? So you can have a diaper subscription. I know that. I have a little kid. You can have that, right? It's about the business model. What are the revenue streams? And also the costs, right? So what are the costs to those revenue streams? And how can I create a business model that covers channels, costs, revenue streams, way of monetization, but also leverage of unpaid recommendations, right? Meaning virality, network effects is also part of the business model. Doodle was the last employer, was my last employer before I went independent. There as well, Doodle is a classic example of leveraging network effects, right? I sent a poll to the three of you, and immediately you get in touch with Doodle and are like, "Oh, this is super cool," and you start using it, right? Like this is part of a business model. It's yes, user experience. Yes, it's kind of also product experience as an end-to-end thing. Also from the internal view, right? So how do we make sure that the systems work in a way that really we get the right poll and so on and so forth? But it's also part of the business model, because this way we can grow. So also, of course, when I mention growth, it's also a channel, right? Growth channel, also marketing channel. And Doodle, for example, using ad placements, it's a revenue channel. So the three of you see the ads that are on the free Doodle page, right? And Doodle makes revenue with it, or makes money with it. On the other side, you see the cool premium features, and you're like, "Hey, I want to get a subscription," and boom, Doodle gets subscription revenue, right? So it's all part of the business model, and as a product manager, you have to think about that.
The business model, my brain just sort of explodes, because it seems like there could be so many seemingly valid sounding options.
Yep.
It's like, so let's just describe a couple extremes, one, a freemium, and then you get them hooked, and maybe you have ads, and then ultimately you're going to, upsell them. A complete opposite, where it's just all sales led, and it's a big thing, and you could make somebody could make an impassioned, rational case for these completely different. And those are I'm describing opposites, and there's all these other moving pieces. How in the world does a product and it seems like a product manager is going to have a tough time of it, because it might be things, the pricing department's supposed to do this and marketing's supposed to do this, and so it seems like it could be lost, where you really need this cohesive strategy that can only happen if you get, it can't happen if all these pieces are making individual decisions. As a product manager, how do you navigate that?
The other very difficult questions and very difficult things to do, and you cannot master it. Like, I'll be honest, like every product manager will fail on mastering it, because it's just too difficult. You can just do your best, and there are different techniques and ways to do this. So there's a what was it? Said Khan keeps saying all frameworks are wrong, but some are useful. And I'm the opposite of well, I'm not exactly the opposite. I said never talk in extremes, right? I believe frameworks, they're probably not right, but they're helpful in getting started, and then you can adjust them to your reality to make them right. And there are some frameworks that help you to keep this alignment, or to create this alignment, to keep this alignment. My most favorite one is the impact mapping, that basically really connects the business goal with the target group or the audience that you need to consider in order to achieve the business goal. So it could be also like an internal group of people or whatever, and then the outcomes that these people try to achieve. and then only then think about the deliverables, basically the ideas that help you to actually achieve those two levels of goals, right? So this is a way that or this is the framework that helps you to wrap your mind around the whole connection and the whole alignment. You can use it in a visual way to actually keep your organization aligned. But this is just one framework, right? So let me take the first principles of this framework, and let's try to apply it to product reality. So the first principles of this framework say you need to understand the business goal of the product. So basically it's the strategic level. So what are we trying to achieve, for example, this year, right? So in the beginning of the year, you set targets, right? You set targets of the year, and you try to align with your company on those targets. Okay, this is what everybody has to work towards. Then you need to understand your focus for that year. Who do we need to focus on to achieve this business goal, right? And this is also an exercise where you, as a product manager, have to get like different views. So different stakeholders will have different targets or target groups to address with the changes. And again, it might be internal as well, right? So the marketing team might work on improving their own processes so that they can run ads more efficiently, for example, whatever, right? So everybody has their own target groups in their mind. So you have to make sure that these align. Then you have to understand every target group's goals, why they are focusing on that, and why they believe that the actions that they want to do or the goals they have in mind will support the business goal. And then based on that, you can go back to your team and think about what you can do to either leverage their goals, their achievements, or actually what your goals are and who you should target, and what you need to do to achieve your goals, right? Now, this sounded a bit like secondary, so you should not do it as secondary after you've talked to the others. So you should have your own opinion based on evidence, data, insights that you have, that you can leverage from analytics, from discovery, from interviews. And I know that you guys are totally on the jobs to be done side, so one of my most favorite interview techniques. Yeah. And that's also one of my most favorite interview techniques, jobs to be done technique, because this is another framework that actually helps align across functions, right? Because when you understand a customer's journey, like what made them actually switch to this product, what did they experience before they switched? What was their situation? What was their context? Even like very small things like what did they Google for, right? All these little information, like these little pieces of information, help actually align across teams to have at least the same understanding of what made a user switch and become your customer, right? So even that. So there are lots of different techniques that actually help you to align with other functions. But you have to do it together with them, or you have to provide access to the insights, right? So it's about active communication. And that's one of the most important skills that product managers need to have. They need to be good at communication, right? Proactive communication, over communication, communicating with very simple words so that really everybody understands it, right? Idiot proof. I called out, make it idiot proof, because yes, you have idiots in your company. Don't want to offend anyone, but that's reality. We all have idiots in the company, right? So, and you have to make sure you address it in a way, or you communicate insights, decisions, results, analytics, evidence, whatever you do in a way that everybody understands it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then coming back to the first principles, so these are the pieces that you need to make sure that everybody's aware of. So empathizing with the target group, empathizing with the business goal, empathizing with the product goal, empathizing with the target group's goal, and only then talk about ideas. Reality is, now let's come back to the no bullshit point. Reality is we start with the ideas, Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an idea of what they believe is going to be the killer feature in the next round, in the next release. This is going to make us millions and billions and gazillions and whatever. And then you have to work your way through it, right? So you can reverse the conversation and be like, hey, yes, sure, let's do this. Let me try to understand, like, when we have built this feature, what's your expectation, right? So you ask for the goals, right? So your goals with this feature. Okay, your expectations. Can we say that if we wanted to measure success, the outcome would look like boom, you have the outcome, you have a success metric. And then you have a better idea of what they were actually trying to do, right? So asking for the problem without asking for the problem they're trying to solve. And then you can come back with different ideas on how to solve their problem, actually, and how to help them achieve their outcome, right? So there are ways of handling it, but it's important to really make this alignment. Now I will add another layer of it depends on this. So this is the it depends of the it depends of the it depends. It depends on the company size.
Yeah.
Right? When I started at Doodle, we were 35 people. We just needed a lunch with everybody, and then we could align on everything. Exaggerating on how simple it is, right? But you get it. It's a metaphor. When I left, we were, I think, about 100, and it was already like quite difficult to get an alignment because we had those functions and we had those focus points. It was not only about those 3-4 cross-functional teams that would all here and there align with some functional teams to get their help or whatever. It would be like sales team, marketing team, PR, engineers, agile coach, well, no, not agile coaches, but product managers, whatever, right? So there were functions, and now we had to cross-functionally break those functions somehow, right? And it's already a different layer. And then we were only 1,000 yet. Now think about a company of 100, and think about a company that are 1,000 or 10,000 people. There you have this difference between pricing department, marketing department, pricing department, SEO department, not person, department, SEM department, social media department. It's almost departments, right? It's not even teams anymore. The teams are so big that they are almost departments. And that's a completely different topic.
Yeah.
Right. I can't give you any answer of how to do it. You just have to make sure you find the right people.
I was hoping there exactly. Because I feel like all the points, I just want to stretch this. I think all the points you made, I think is the larger the company gets, I think the more important is that kind of foolproof communication. And that's super difficult because suddenly you are in a situation where either you use a framework, and framework uses one kind of jargon. So they call things a different, they talk about revenue streams, or they talk about jobs, or like, it doesn't matter, but whatever framework or tool you use, it has they use certain words. Yeah. And whenever you try to use that or then bring it out into your organization, or even insights from a study or whatever, it's super difficult to control what will people think when they read that word. And that depends so heavily on the company. And the bigger the company is, for me at least, the harder it is to kind of control this. And I would have loved if you would have, okay, now in big companies, super easy. It's just three pieces of advice. Here's how you can control.
Hacks.
Oh, that
four
would
hacks.
be so good.
The 4 hacks, exactly.
Simple product management.
Yeah, I would call this person out.
Use this magic framework. Works all the time.
Yeah,
but I mean, then suddenly these things get thrown around in the company. Kind of, it makes the tour, and then a couple of 100 people have seen it, and it comes back, and it can mean a completely different thing. So it's very like these. I think we called it Chinese whisper or telephone game kind of thing, where just stuff gets passed around, it comes back, and it changed. Like, so that's very hard to control, I think.
Let me give you an anecdote on this. I will not mention the company's name, but one company that I worked for, and it was really a global company with a couple of thousands employees. I made a presentation. I was in their commercial management team, and I made a presentation. I sent it to someone. It was kind of a support for the sales team for selling the product that we were working on. And I think a couple of weeks later, and it was a really good presentation, I have to say, right? So nobody was able to make such good PowerPoint presentations than I was surprised that it was this way, but it was like that. And a couple of weeks later, I received a presentation from some other sales department that were trying to sell a different product, or something completely different. And they would use this as an example of how to prepare a sales document to help the sales team. And guess what? Half of the presentation was mine. I was like, okay, thank you guys. You explained me with my own slides how I should create a sales presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. And another same company regarding who means what when they say what, right? So we even had like an abbreviations list per team, because the same abbreviation in a different team could mean something else.
That's difficult to manage.
Big thing I really take away from that is just this ability, this communication, over communicating.
Yeah.
But you also said, but you also said, you know, to still maintain your own position. So what I sort of imagine is it's like you're communicating, you're maintaining your own position, but not necessarily trying to get your way. If that's just something different, if that makes sense. I don't know, but it definitely occurs to me when you were talking about how you sort of have this directness about you, let's say, but also over time you've learned to present things a little softer. You sort of altered your approach a little bit. Because if you're not careful, like the whole team can go off base, and sometimes everybody knows it. It's just like watching, and you're familiar with the movie Austin Powers. You remember Austin Powers? You remember when the steamroller's coming real slow and the guy's like, ah, and he's just like, we're coming toward, ah. So everybody sees this disaster, but somebody has to stand up and say, no, this is BS. Like this thing's going in the wrong direction. Yeah.
And you need to be very careful with that, right? Because never forget politics.
Yeah. I mean, if it's going the wrong direction, it was somebody's idea to make it go that direction. And as a product manager, you will step on everybody's toes eventually. And so you get really good at apologizing and softening things up. And you talked about building trust. That seems key also. The other thing I wanted to build up or to elaborate on what you said is that you have your set of frameworks, your set of tools. But if I can paraphrase a little bit, it sounds like you don't feel the need to use them sort of religiously, or like you said your words, you back up to first principles. What's this thing trying to accomplish? And so you're not adhering to a tool so rigidly. And maybe maybe that resonates with me because
pragmatic over dogmatic, as I say.
Yeah, it seems like product managers can be a little guilty of this. We use this process for this. We use this, and almost like these are magic spells that just do things. You know, I think as a group, we can be guilty of that.
It depends, right? So, again, here you go. I think there's this concept of shuari in the agile way of working, right? So in general, okay, let's remove all the buzzwords. Let's just say, when you start working in a specific way, it's always good to have some starting point. And I see frameworks as a starting point that help you to get set up on something that you've not been familiar with until then, right? That is new to you probably, or maybe it's not completely new to you, but you're not all in this team, in this constellation, in this team, in the constellation, with the product, with this company, with these customers, in this market. It's a unique situation always, right? Like as soon as you switch a team, it's already another unique situation. And then you need to start from somewhere. And the framework can help you to start from somewhere. And then you learn how the framework works in your situation. But at the same time, you also learn how the framework does not work in your situation, right? So when does it work? When does it not work? Where do we need to adjust the framework to our needs? When do we need to adjust us to the framework? And this is what we call experience, right? So you build up experience using this framework in your unique situation. And then it needs a good team discussion. It needs good common sense, good evaluation to then decide together if you want to adapt to the process or if you want to adapt the process to you.
I really
so
like
don't be
this.
too dogmatic with the process.
I love it.
I've stolen this as well. I don't know who from, but they said the best frameworks are those that you build yourself. Like, so you start somewhere. You might take a framework and then because that gives security, and at least there is or a sense of, hey, this is a process. I know the steps. But then I completely agree. You have to tweak and change it. Otherwise, it's trying to make reality fit the framework is not a good approach. I believe it should be kind of the other way around, and it only goes so far. I mean, certain frameworks help in a certain situation, and they don't in others, and that's completely fine.
And what you should also do, instead of avoiding it, you should actively mesh the frameworks. You should blend them. My most favorite blend is the impact map with the opportunity solution tree. You start with the impact map, break it down to the outcomes level, which is the product outcome in the opportunity solution tree. And then you go out and find all the opportunities under the outcome and only then ideate the solutions per opportunity, right? Instead of jumping from outcome to solution. So it's a blend. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. So as you can see, I can be very excited about connecting the dots, right?
I was very curious about that. Sorry, go ahead.
And then also, like, when you have the ideas on the impact map level, the original impact map continues on the story level. So from the idea from the deliverables, you move it to delivery, right? So you deliver on the ideas. But instead of that, you can actually make a blend of stories, experiments, hypotheses, and research. Right. So because there are items or there are ideas you want to build because you have enough evidence, you have enough confidence, whatever, enough science that show you that this is going to have good impact on product and business goals. That's the main goal of the impact map, right? Find the ideas that have an impact on product and business goals, or user and business goals. And then when you have enough evidence, then you can of course plan to build it somewhere in your backlog, right? If you don't, you need more confidence, then you need more insights, right? So you need to do some more research, some experiments, adding in lean startup, build, measure, learn to run some experiments and see if there's meat on the idea, right? And and this way you can actually organize your ideas, either product backlog or sprint backlog, depends, right? You can prioritize your backlog based on the information that you get from that level. So again, it's a blend, right? So we are blending here. We're blending concepts, we're blending frameworks, and that's what I mean with first principles thinking. Why do we use this framework? What is this framework good for? This is what you should ask yourself, right? What is it good for? What's the goal of this framework? And then what's the thought process behind this framework? What are the single pieces of this framework, and how can I make sure that I reduce uncertainty of this piece of this framework. Oh, there's another framework. I can use that for that, right? So blend it, make it yours.
I know something people are curious about, or by people, maybe I mean me. It's sort of your short. I was sort of keeping notes of the tools in your box, and three that I definitely heard: this impact map, lean startup, jobs to be done, interviews. You don't have to go into detail unless you just want to, but what else is on your short list of like the tools that you regularly go to?
Yeah, so opportunity solution tree is one that I mentioned.
Opportunity solution tree.
Is that Teresa Torres?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And pirate metrics.
What was the last one?
Pirate metrics.
I'm not familiar with that.
The pirate metrics. So
Pirate.
this is the metrics that are used for a lot of what is called product-led growth, I guess.
Yes and no. So
pyrometrics has nothing to do with setting things on fire. Is that right?
Well, no, if you're on fire, you're on fire.
Not pyro.
Not pyro.
No, pirate.
What is it? Acronym, abbreviation? I don't know what is the English. What does what mean? Anyways, so it's AARRR: acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue, or short AARRR. Or with my best pirate voice, it's R.
Oh.
And that's why it's called pirate metrics. That's
metrics. Oh,
cool. Yeah, that's a framework by Dave
because the pirates do R. Yeah.
That's so fun.
I'd never made that connection.
That is so fun.
That's the reason why.
I thought it was more interesting when I thought it had to do with setting things on fire, but pirates are good too.
So now whenever you see a pirate, you will remember me.
Excellent. Impact map, lean startup, jobs you've done, interviews, opportunity solution tree, and pirate metrics. Those are your key
and let me
tools.
get back to so there are a couple more, like the goals, signals, metrics. I'm a very data informed person and evidence based decision making person, and there's a goals, signals, metrics, and goals, questions, metrics frameworks that I use very often. North Star metric, one of my favorite ones. It's a nice North Star metric tree can be so beautiful. And I'm not sure if you ever thought about someone saying beautiful to a metrics tree, but it is. Metrics tree in general, like KPI trees, how to break them down and so on. So it's also part of my tool set. And what else? There are different prioritization techniques that you can use. I see prioritization techniques in general as some sort of weighted scorecard. How do you pronounce that word?
I think it sounds all right.
Yeah, that a scorecard. When you have the criteria and then you rate those criteria, and if it's the RICE method, the PI, the ICE, the impact effort, whatever it is, it's all about rating your stuff and then giving it a number. And you should be careful with that. It has its place, but it's not like really scientific way of prioritizing things. Lean canvas. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's a mix of, so whenever I start working on a new product, it's a mix of lean canvas, business model canvas, and value proposition canvas. It's a mix of that. And I'm by now not so dogmatic about filling out everything. It's more like in my head, like checking those boxes. Have I thought about this? Have I thought about that, etc., etc.? And sometimes if I can't keep it in my mind, I really put it down on the lean canvas to make sure I've thought about everything. And then I use an assumption map to basically map the most risky pieces of my whole concept. So I use lean canvas more to find the right solution for the right problem. Then I use the business model canvas to make sure I have thought about all the pieces of the business model. And before that, I use the value proposition canvas to make sure I can empathize well with the persona that I'm creating the product for. So it's kind of like a mix of those three. But I also wanted to go back to Jonathan's point about product-led growth and pirate metrics. So you mentioned like this is the framework that you use in product-led growth, and it's a bit like yes and no. So pirate metrics, the original framework is been used as a funnel, and it comes from marketing, and it goes like the idea is that a person, a human, I don't want to call them leads or whatever, but a human goes through those 5 steps, and the steps can be a bit different depending on your product, right? So it might be revenue first and retention after that, for example. It can be like that. And then they go straight through this funnel. In product terms, we know it's like no user experience is a funnel. User experience is some sort of flow. I love thinking in trees, so I would think of a tree or really as a flow that also closes some loops, right? And if we want to see it as a loop, then we can start with the pirate metrics. But it's more like when we go into the product-led growth area, it's more than that. So we also have to think about habit moments, not only activation moments, but also habit moments. Like how do we create a habit so that actually the person really comes back and uses it, and only then to retention mode, for example. The word of engagement is important, right? So in the pirate metrics, the word engagement doesn't exist because it's somewhere between activation and retention. But if you want to have a look at it like very concretely, and now we get to the point of make it yours, right? You can adjust this flow and be like, okay, if we want to create engagement, we need to get them somewhere from here to there, right? Somehow we need to get them from here to there so that they keep engaging. There we talk about the habit moments and so on and so forth. But then there's also the flywheel concept, and I'm not super familiar with that one. I'm not very deep into that. I'm not a product-led growth expert. It's kind of a growth model, right? So it's a growth model. It's kind of a channel. It's a way how to get more leads and customers and keep them. And then I will get back to the first principles, thinking that everything is somehow similar. So we have the pirate metrics that are concerned with acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue. We also have the concept of, I'm not sure if you have read Gibson Biddle's Medium article on product strategy, but he says, first of all, you need to make a strategic decision between 3 things: growth, engagement, and monetization. He calls it the GEM model. So growth is acquisition and referral on the pirate metrics. Engagement is somewhere between activation and retention, and monetization is revenue, right? So first principle thinking again. On the other hand, before he made the GEM model famous, in general, when you create a strategy, you think about, okay, this year, is it about growth? About adoption, which is growth? Is it about retention, which is some sort of engagement? Or is it about revenue, which is monetization? And it maps to the GEM model of Gibson Biddle, right? So it's all kind of the same and have a different name. Overall, you have to think about these 3 aspects. Do I want to get more people using my product? Do I want to keep the people using my product? Or do I want to make sure we make good money with the product that people are using, right? And you have to find that balance. And using the pirate metrics, or on the more strategic level, the GEM model, or however you want to call it, like the first principles of that, you make the decision where you want to focus. And based on that, you can also set priorities in the backlog, right? So basically rule out everything that does not support this year's focus, for example.
What was the author of the GEM article?
Gibson Biddle, ex VP product of Netflix.
One more time, sorry. Gibson
Biddle.
Gib.
I can send you the link.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be helpful. Yeah, that sounds like a good one. Well, you certainly have a very comprehensive set of tools in your box that you pull from.
Again, it's rather the first principles, right? You start with that, and then at one point, it's so much in your DNA that you pull the good pieces of the different frameworks that you have in your tool set, and then put them or use them in the situation, whatever, like however you need them, right? And this is also, by the way, one of the reasons why product managers and product leaders approach me for my coaching, because they see in my content that I'm breaking down these theories and frameworks in a way that they can apply them in the daily practice. And there's no bullshit thing, right? So okay, theory, nice, but how do we make it work? There's actionable advice and tips and tricks as well. Like, how do you tweak it to make it work for your situation? And some people don't know how to actually tweak it, how to break it down. Yeah. This process of breaking it down.
And in your experience, how much leverage do PMs have in companies regarding, because we're talking about fairly deep strategic things and going quite deep into how the business works, into how the product works. How much leverage in your experience do you think PMs have? Because I have heard here and there that a lot of PMs will say that basically they are in the middle of all sorts of different interactions and teams, and they don't really have any leverage to change anything. And what's your take on that? And what would you recommend to a PM to be able to make these kinds of changes?
So we have, again, different levels, right? We have the product leadership and we have the product management. And product leadership is in the battlefield of politics. And product leadership has to make sure that everybody's aligned on the higher level, right? And that also means that product leadership is the level where you can have big leverage regarding how you work and how decisions are made to build the right thing. As I mentioned in the very beginning, that's the main thing, right? Build the right thing. And it's a minefield and battlefield, and the product leadership has to make sure to navigate this field so that actually there is enough trust so that the product team can either make the decision or suggest the decision. And then on the other side, we have the product team on the tactical level. So they are the ones who actually execute on everything, right? And execute does not necessarily only mean delivery. It's execution on strategy, execution on discovery, execution on delivery. So they are executing. That's product execution, right? And if they want to build and then it depends again on the company. So they are product-led or product-driven companies, where everybody's aligned on the impact of the product on the market. So it does not mean product management decides what needs to be done. It means everybody's pulling the same direction to make big impact with the product on the market. That's what product driven means, right? And in this kind of companies, it's easier to have this impact, and it's easier to make other departments hear what you say. Still doesn't mean that they have to agree or follow what you say, but it's easier than compared to not product-driven companies, because they're typically people and departments have their own agenda, right? They have their own goals. And now it becomes interesting when you are a product manager on a tactical level. Now one option is you don't try to change anything and you just take the money and go home. Right? So, and it's fine. I don't want to say that this is a bad thing. we live in a world where we have to be employed, or if we are not employed, so let me take this back because I'm not employed, but we have to make money to live. No money, no life. That's a system that we live in. So it is okay to be that person who says like, fuck it, I don't care. I just go to work, get my salary and go back, and I enjoy the rest of my free time, right? I wished, and I'll be very honest with you, I wished I was this kind of a person. I really wished it. And I really mean it. There's no sarcasm or no way of trying to justify this way of living. I truly say I wished I was this kind of person. I am not, and that's one of the reasons why I said I'm doing my own thing, and also one of the reasons why I'm trying to change the way how companies work and how product teams work. And that's the second option. You are not that kind of a person, and you really want to change something. Again, micro and macro environment. You can always start with your micro environment. So the team that you're working together with, you will always work in restrictions. There is no reality with where you have no restrictions, right? This doesn't exist. You always have restrictions. So in the restrictions that you have, what can you do? What is in your control? What is something that you can influence? And what is out of your control, right? And there it depends. So an example. You can come together with your cross-functional team or with a functional team, it doesn't matter, and make enough pressure on the management side to change things in a way so that you have more freedom or room. It's not about freedom, but more room and more space to run small experiments on your website. B2B difficult, but B2C in a traffic heavy space. Why not? It's not so difficult. You need some tools, yes, and then you need to approve it, yes, but then it's not so difficult. Other example, so these are all from real life, from my own experience, yeah. Other example, you work in a company where you as a product manager have to pick up all the skills that are missing in your team and have to basically compensate for that. What's the consequence? The consequence is you cannot do your own job well because you have to do the other pieces that are missing.
Yeah.
Right? So what can you do? For example, in a company where there is no concept of a tech lead, you can pick the person that you think is a natural alpha in your team and just have conversations as if it was a tech lead, without excluding the others, but like kind of like step by step getting the others into the mood that it's actually a good idea if they don't have to be in all of the discussions, you know. And then at one point, go to your manager and be like, look, this guy and I and our designer as a trio, our suggestion is XYZ, without saying that it's a tech lead, right? And then at one point they will see, it's actually not a bad idea to have a tech lead. And then they will introduce a tech lead to the other teams as a role. And maybe the person in your team that you have defined as your tech lead without defining it officially, suddenly becomes officially the tech lead and gets a promotion. Great, right? So you can change things in your microenvironment, show instead of tell, right? You show that it works and convince your adjacent environment that it's a good idea. Another example, you don't have a user researcher as a role in your company or as a function in your company, and the product designers are doing research and design, which is a lot for a designer. And then you have someone in the team who's really good at user research, and then you show the first results of a user research and make decisions based on that. And you show that it was a good decision. It was successful, right? The change that you made was successful. And then you suddenly have the attention of your product leader and the management that user research is a good thing. Hey, maybe we should have more. Hey, maybe we should have dedicated roles for that. Hey, maybe we should have a dedicated function. Okay, how can we make this work? How can we get this ball rolling, right? So change your microenvironment, show that it goes well, and then change your macro environment. If possible, it might not work, but it might work, right? And Scott, you mentioned something a couple of minutes ago, maybe 20 minutes ago, something about apologizing. And I would say do the opposite. And that's a mistake that I did way too long in my career. In the beginning of my career, I waited very long for permission to do something instead of being proactive and just trying things out. As long as you try things out in a not super risky environment, low-hanging fruits, right? Not super risky, but you can show some impact and show that it's a good idea to do it this way, then do it and show it. And now it's me saying, like, do it, and then the next person tries and gets fired. I'm sorry for that. This is not, I hope this is not what's going to happen. Yeah. Exactly. So again, it depends, right? It depends on your environment. If you're in a very toxic environment and you feel like it's dangerous to do that, then don't do it, obviously, right? So be careful with this advice. If you feel like you can do these small things, then do these small things. If you cannot, then it's again your decision. Either you go get your paycheck and go home, or you leave and find a different environment where you feel better. Also, anecdote and learning for me, right? So, as a fish, find your water. If that's the wrong water, then find a different sea.
Oh, I like that. What I was about to say is, there's no risk-free path. Like if you just take your money and go home, you're risking one day you're just going to get a call and you know what, you're not really that useful to us. If you're pushing really hard on everything, you might just really personally irritate the wrong person. And so for me personally, my principle was, if I just want to check myself that my motives are what they should be, I'm really trying to do my best for the company, and then I'll just sort of pay the price for what those consequences are. And it never really worked out too. I mean, I don't recall anything really bad happening, but you get in some sticky situations. But I think what attracts a lot of product managers is it's fun and exciting, and you're on the leading edge of thing, and you make a difference. And so I think for anybody that's really cut out to be a product manager, they're not going to be too afraid of. I think they're going to be more like your personality, Bushra, where they're going to be a little more. They're going to be a little more aggressive. I do want to cover one more topic before we close up here. You mentioned that a few years ago you pivoted from being a product manager within a corporation to being a solopreneur, if you use that, and now you're teaching and you're coaching. And if you could go back 3 years and give yourself advice of being a solopreneur, what would you tell yourself 3 years ago?
Just do it. So, context.
Yeah.
Decisions without context are bad, right? So let me give you decision. Context, not the decision. The decision was mine. I have studied industrial engineering and management with the majors of software engineering, marketing and innovation, and quality management. Perfect for becoming a product manager. During my studies, I had a couple of attempts of building something on my own with some colleagues, and we stopped. We like whenever I had an attempt, I stopped. And back then, I was also thinking, like, if there was something that was in my skill set that I could be self-employed with this skill set, whatever it is, it would be great. But I have nothing in my skill set to do so. So this wish of being self-employed was always there. it was my mind and my fears that always stopped me from taking risks. After being, when was that? 2015. So after 4 years on the market working, I had two offers to be a CPO of a startup, and I rejected both because I said I feel I'm not ready for it. That's a limiting belief. I was ready for it. I was just afraid of it. Then here there was another, here in Switzerland, there was another chance to be a head of product of a startup. And I said, I'm not ready for it. Although I know my shit, I said, I'm not ready for it. So my advice to my younger self, not only 3 years ago, but like really times back, just do it. And now 3 years ago, what made me actually take this step? I was very, very happy at Doodle. So it was a great team, great product. Yeah, we were having some organizational changes. Changes prosper, right? I had my reasons to quit, let's put it this way, but the main reason was not a push to leave the company, but a pull to chase an idea. And I was thinking, look, I'm turning 40 soon, and now or never, right? So I will, and that's also how I left the company, telling the CEO, look, I'm at a point where I'm indecisive, but I will do that because if I don't do it now, I will regret it. And we're both like, hey, whenever you feel like, right, then come back. And I was promoted to product leader at Doodle as well, way too late. In general, all over my career, not in Doodle terms. I was chasing an idea. I wanted to build a digital product, and I stopped at a point where I validated the problem, I validated the solution, and I noticed I need investors. Like even the smallest solution would need investors. It's something that now with GPT-4 would be such an easy thing to build with a no-code tool. Like really that. But just 3 years ago, it was not possible to build it. I would have needed like engineers to really build the logic that I needed, and I would need funding. And I said, I don't want to work with investors. And I stopped. And then I kind of, got from one project to another, interim product management, interim product leadership, coaching, advising, consulting, like all of these things. At the same time, then I created my product analytics bootcamp. It's an online cohort-based course together with Henry Latham from Product MBA. We created this course. So I tried a lot of different things, right? And then I had a year of a baby break, and being fully back to work it's 2023. So last year, 2022, I tried a couple of more things, and then I decided what I want to do. And so just do it would be my first advice. Second advice would be do your discovery work earlier. I spent half of this year now to do more discovery on the market side. So I now know what I want to do, or what my specialties are, where I'm very good at, and what really makes me feel joy. You saw me talking about the North Star metric is another framework that you can write down, right? And so you saw me being excited talking about data stuff, right? And evidence and testing and experiments and North Star metric and impact mapping and this kind of thing, right? I know where I'm good at. I know what I would love to do. And now it's the market research part, right? And I spent the first half of the year for that in order to now come back and have an offer for the market. But it was too late. So the second advice would be do your market research early on. And that's also my advice for every company, right? The longer you postpone your discovery, your user research, market research, discovery work, the longer it will take you to create an offer that's going to make boom on the market.
Yeah.
You don't know who you are creating your product for. And with who, I mean a whole market, which means the target group, user persona, buyer persona, your competition on the field, the substitutes on the field. It's not like competition is not always direct competition, right? Jobs to be done. What's a substitute, right? What's a job to be done here? But also trends. What is happening? What is changing? Where do you see is the world heading 5 years from now? Do this research early on. And yes, users and customers are part of the research. Yes, talking to real humans and not just asking ChatGPT for their view of the world is part of research. Do this early on. When you postpone it, then you will not know who you are creating the offer for. And if you don't know who you're creating the offer for, you cannot create a good offer. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
So just do it and start research early.
Amen.
Sounds like good advice. Yeah.
Sounds like fantastic advice. All right. Well, we're sort of getting toward the end here. Anything else you'd like to let folks know about? Or anything we should have, like a good qualitative interview? Anything I should have asked you about that I didn't?
Oh, I'm always open to the questions you guys have. So I'm fine. Maybe you should have asked me like how I'm doing, so I could ask you how you are doing, good guys. Huh?
Well, maybe we'll just.
How are you doing, guys?
We're
How's the weather?
Well, maybe we'll have to do this again because you've inspired. There's a lot. We went through all these. There's you asked. You mentioned lots of things that I'd love to ask more about. So maybe we can twist your arm, get you back on here at some point.
Episode 2, right?
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
All right.
I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Just saying.
Oh well, even of the prequels. Okay, let's just talk Star Wars. What's the best movie? What's the worst one? Did you like the last 3?
I love episode 4. That's the classic one. Right?
Yeah.
So the very first one that came out. I hated 7.
Yeah.
I hated 7. It was just like so not Star Wars at all. And I was like, seriously, no.
Yeah. 7, 8, 9 were all squirrely, but my kids, I've got 2 girls, they love the porgs. They hate we don't like the movie, but we're big fans of the porgs. But yeah, 4, 5, 6. I think 5's the best personally, but yeah.
8 is not too bad. 8 has some sort of the magic of the original ones. It's not too bad. So it is quite okay. I just don't like that it still has this like Disney feeling.
Yeah. Why would it have a Disney feeling?
Wow, why at all, right?
Yeah.
I was at some points expecting somebody to start dancing and singing, you know. Like, seriously. But still 8 was quite okay.
Yeah.
Like from the new ones, 8 was quite okay.
Yeah.
But 4 is still my
4 is good.
Nothing tops 4.
I'm old enough that I remember when 4 was the only one. I think I'd be the only one on this call that would remember that. But anyway, that was good. That was
in this call, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I remember the first ones before the second batch came out. I was old enough for that, so
yeah.
Oh, me too.
You're not alone.
No, that I remember too. Like the first batch before the second batch came. Yeah, I'm that old as well.
All right. Well, very good. Well, Bushra, I love so many things about what we talked about today. Nuance, the importance of nuance, And sort of a side little thing, I remember being in elementary school, like in social studies, they would say, well, this people that lived here, they all liked this. And I remember as a little kid thinking, they all liked it. So I've sort of had this visceral reaction to these generalizations. But anyway, so I loved your take on nuance and the importance of balance in product management. You clearly know your stuff. It's a very long list of frameworks. But also I really appreciated how you put them in perspective and you go back to first principles. What is this tool for? You're clearly a continuous learner, and I think the best product managers are. And I got to say, I love the no BS approach. It's not just something you say; it's right there in your materials. I mean, after all, you're the bad girl of product management, so that's good. But hey, thanks so much for spending time with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a really fun conversation with you guys. Thank you.
Cool. Well,
Thank you.
We'd love to do it again. And that, friends,
episode 2. I'm saying
episode 2.
Episode
2.
2.
The sequel. And that, friends,
let's do it the German way. Episode 2.
I think that's
what's that?
That's the German way. Yeah.
What does that mean? Oh, that's
two.
just German.
This is
two?
how Germans. Yeah.
Oh.
1, 2. So this is how Germans count. 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5.
That
So
makes more
episode
sense
2.
in a way because that's your first. But I'm sure you know, I don't know. Americans 1, 2, 3. Maybe we'll just 1, 2. I'll do it.
And I learned. I think in British it's this. Something like that.
You have to be careful which one you suggest as number 1. That
Yes.
might.
Don't
be careful which one you start with.
Yeah.
I think in Greece it's the other way around.
But
In Greece, right?
if you start with the wrong digit, that can really confuse this conversation that we're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, people, that concludes today's Product Quest podcast. Follow us and link. Oh, wait, let me back up a second. Let's talk about where to find Bushra. I almost forgot. On Twitter, or at least formerly somewhat, underline BEESEA underline, which is the only place that still says the bad girl product management as of today anyway. Or on LinkedIn, I guess it's technically BUSRA space COSKUNER, or on our website, Busra.co. That's BUSRA.co. Sorry, I almost forgot that. And with that, thanks folks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
It's always a good sign if I have a lot of research to do, and I've got all this scribbled down my page.
So 2, let's do it.
Episode 2.